Hey there, guys. I'm your today's host, Star Quark, back with another brand new episode of Pride of Prejudice, Chapter 7. Mr. Bennet's property consists almost entirely in an estate of $2,000 a year, which unfortunately for his daughters was entailed in default of inheritance mail on a distant relation. And their mother's fortune, though ample for her situation in life, could but ill supply the deficiency of his. Her father had been an attorney in Merton, and had left her £4,000. She had a sister married to a Mr. Phillips, who had been a clerk to their father, and succeeded him in the business, and a brother settled in London in a respectable line of trade. The village of Longbourn was only 1 mile from Meryton, a most convenient distance from the young ladies, who were usually tempted thither 3 or 4 times a week to pay their duty to their aunt and to a milliner's shop just over the way. The two youngest of the family, Catherine and Lydia, were particularly frequent in these attentions. Their minds were more vacant than their sisters, and when nothing better offered, a walk to Meryton was necessary to amuse their morning hours and furnish the conversation for the evening. And, however bare of news the country in general might be, they always contrived to learn some from their aunt. At present, indeed, they were well supplied both with news and happiness by the recent arrival of a militia regiment in the neighborhood. It was to remain the whole winter, and Merton was the headquarters. Their visits to Mrs. Phillips were now productive of the most interesting intelligence. Every day added something to their knowledge of the officers' names and connections. Their lodgings were not long a secret, and at length they began to know the officers themselves. Mr. Phillips visited them all, and this opened to his nieces a source of felicity known before. They could talk of nothing but officers, and Mr. Bingley's large fortune, the mention of which gave animation to their mother, was worthless in their eyes, when opposed to the regimental of an ensign. After listening one morning to their infusion on the subject, Mr. Bentley coolly observed, "From all that I can collect by your manner of talking, you must be two of the silliest girls in the country. I have suspected it some time, but I am not convinced." Catherine was disconcerted, and made no answer, but Lydia, with perfect indifference, continued to express her admiration of Captain Carter, and her hope of seeing him in the course of the day, as he was going the next morning to London. I am astonished, my dear," said Mrs. Bennet, "that you should be so ready to think your own children silly. If I wish to think slightingly of nobody's children, it should not be of my own, however." If my children are silly, I must hope to be always sensible of it. Yes, but as it happens, they are all of them very clever. This is the only point I flatter myself on which we do not agree. I had hoped that our sentiments consisted in every particular. But I must so far differ from you as to think our two youngest daughters uncommonly foolish. My dear Mr. Bennet, you must not accept such girls to have the sense of their fathers and mother. When they get to our age, I dare say they will not think about officers any more than we do. I remember the time when I liked the red coat myself very well, and so I do still at my heart. And if a smart young colonel with 5 or 6 thousand a year should want one of my girls, I shall not say nay to them. And I thought Colonel Forster looked very becoming the other night at Sir William's in his regimental. Mamma, cried Lydia, my aunt says that Colonel Forster and Captain Carter do not go so often to Miss Watson's as they did when they first came. She sees them now very often standing in Clerk's library. Mr. Bennet was prevented replying by the entrance of the footman with a note on Miss Bennet. It came from Netherfield, and the servant waited for an answer. Mr. Bennet's eyes sparkled with pleasure, and she was eagerly calling out, while her daughter read, Well, Jane, who is it from? What is it about? What does he say? Well, Jane, make haste and tell us. Make it haste, my love. It is from Mrs. Bingley, said Jane, and then read it aloud. My dear friend, if you are not so compassionate as to dine today with Lucia and me, we shall be in danger of hating each other for the rest of our lives. For a whole day's tete-a-tete between two women can never end without a quarrel. Come as soon as you can on the receipt of this. My brother and the gentlemen are to dine with the officers. Yours ever, Caroline Bingley. This is not end yet, but that's for the whole part of the day's show. Please subscribe me to continue listening Pride and Prejudice, Chapter 7, Part 2. I will see you guys in Chapter 7, Part 2. Adios.